Welcome back. All right, so we're going to talk about the Anaheim Ducks as I continue through my series, looking at teams at the quarter century mark. The Anaheim Ducks, an interesting tale in that when I did the power rankings for the regular season, they were 17th on that power rankings. They were 9th in the playoffs power rankings that I did. So when they get into the playoffs, they're dangerous, as proven by them winning the Stanley Cup in 2007, being finalists in 2003, and reaching the conference finals on three other occasions: 2006, 2015, and 2017. Now, what we're looking at with them currently, of course, is that they're in a rebuild. This will be their seventh year with no playoffs, unless there's a rally after Four Nations. And, I mean, anything's possible. The West, there's definitely room there for somebody to jump in. And Anaheim's been figuring it out offensively recently. So their last Stanley Cup win, of course, 2007. To date, the only Stanley Cup win for the Anaheim Ducks. And that was shortly after they changed their name from Mighty Ducks. Became Anaheim Ducks, suddenly they're champs. Now, for a grade, I'm giving them a B, because I feel like they did win a Stanley Cup, and they are pretty darn good in the playoffs when they get there. So I think they deserve to get a B. You guys can let me know your thoughts on that. I think the letter grade is just kind of just a fun thing to throw in there. So it's not really meant to be taken like overly seriously or anything. Now, looking at their top 10 scorers from 2000-2001 through 2023-2024, Getzlaf leads the way. Not a surprise. 1,157 games played, 282 goals, 737 assists, 1,019 points. Corey Perry is second. Also not a surprise. 988 games played, 372 goals, 404 assists, 776 points. Teemu Selanne, next on the list, 633 games played, 258 goals, 307 assists for 565 points. The recently traded Cam Fowler, 974 games played, 96 goals, 357 assists, 453 points. He's had a nice bump in his play since going to St. Louis. It is kind of a shame that he doesn't spend his entire career in Anaheim, though. Silverberg, 772 games, 158 goals, 196 assists for 354 points. Rickard Rakell, 550 games played, 154 goals, 185 assists for 339 points. Bobby Ryan, 378 games played, 147 goals, 142 assists for 289 points. Adam Henrique, 435 games played, 135 goals, 129 assists for 264 points. Scott Niedermayer, 371 games played, 60 goals, 204 assists, 264 points. I'm also going to throw out there that Rob Niedermayer was a very good player for the Anaheim Ducks that's not going to be in this list. He was a bottom six player, but it was kind of fun to see him and his brother playing together. Andy McDonald makes the top 10, one that I've talked about a lot. In the early days of the channel, far more than now, of course. 391 games, 92 goals, 167 assists, 259 points. Now, when it comes to goaltenders, it will not surprise anyone that Jaguar leads the way. 206 wins, 163 losses, 59 ties and extra time losses, 914 save percentage. J.S. Jaguar was a big performer come playoff time, as proven in 2003 and again in 2007. Gibson is second on the list, record of 193, 206, and 61, 910 save percentage. It's interesting that a couple of years ago we were hearing about Gibson wanting out and not wanting to play there and not wanting to go through the rebuild process, and yet he's still there, and he's playing really well this season. So is this his last season in Anaheim? We'll probably find out by around March the 7th. If he stays past the deadline, I don't see any reason to get rid of him with the salary cap going up. And having both Gibson and Dostal in net has to be a good thing. They're a decent 1A, 1B. Hiller, a record of 162, 110, and 32, 916 save percentage. Freddie Anderson, a record of 77, 26, and 12, 918 save percentage. So goaltending has generally been really good, and it shows once again Freddie Anderson usually has a really good record in these things. And then you get to the coaching list. Coaching list is, I mean, it's not the shortest, but it's not the longest one either. Guy Chiron, and again, this only goes back to 2000-2001. Brian Murray, Mike Babcock was there for a while. And then you get Randy Carlyle, who was behind the bench multiple occasions. And then you got Bruce Boudreau. Bruce Boudreau, of course, led them to some success, just not Stanley Cup success. Bob Murray was behind the bench as well. That was, to figure out what the problem was with the team on the ice. I remember when he became the coach as well as general manager, and I would imagine that would have made some of the players kind of nervous. Dallas Eakins, and then the current coach, Greg Cronin. And I've heard some negative towards Cronin from some online, but I think that for Cronin, we'll find out how good a coach he is once we get past this part of the rebuild, where it's a really, strong, like we're almost there now, to be honest. It's just a matter of getting the young guys to start producing the way that we know that they can. And then general managers. Pierre Gauthier was general manager here. Then Brian Murray. So he was. He then, of course, Brian Burke. Famously, Brian Burke, the general manager who was here. Here being Anaheim, for the 2007 Stanley Cup. So Brian Burke did get them there. Bob Murray became general manager after that, and then Pat Verbeek. So the current general manager, Pat Verbeek, who's into, I believe, year 3 behind the management of the Anaheim Ducks. Then you get to captains, and the captains, interesting list. You got Paul Kariya. Paul Kariya is one of those ones that really, I think, in this day and age, with the game that we have now, I think he would have put up 140 to 150 points in a season. I think it would have been ridiculous. And he probably would have had a longer career playing in the league that wasn't as punishing as the one that he was in back then. Steve Ruchin was the captain. Scott Niedermayer became captain as well. Scott Niedermayer went through a lot of seasons in New Jersey where they did play that trapping style. When he got to Anaheim, his offensive numbers jumped. The one question with Niedermayer that had always been out there in New Jersey was whether or not he was sacrificing some of his offense for the system in New Jersey. And I think when he arrived in Anaheim, we saw that was the case. And obviously for Niedermayer, it's not a problem because Stanley Cup rings make everything better. Chris Pronger was captain here as well. And then Ryan Getzlaf, who was captain for a very long time, followed by the current captain, who is Radko Gudas. The Anaheim Ducks have had an interesting stretch recently. Again, they're looking at their 7th year in a row of no playoffs. But I do think that the good times are on the way. Dostal's not on the list here, but he's going to be. You have to think that if Zegras, becomes that offensive player that they envision and the contract that he has is justified, that he'll be on this list. And if he doesn't develop that way, he probably does end up getting moved out. Anaheim's one of those teams. I've talked about this with Dallas recently. They have a lot of young players. At some point in time, you probably decide to move one of those young players to get a veteran who can help you to get over the hump come playoff time. They're not there yet, but at some point I think they will be. And if I'm comparing Anaheim to Dallas, which is odd because last night Anaheim beat Dallas, but if I'm comparing Anaheim to Dallas, then that's a pretty strong endorsement for what I think's going on. I think Pat Verbeek's the right guy for general manager. I think Cronin's a good coach as well. Just not a man of a lot of words from what I've seen, and doesn't really have a lot of expression behind the bench comparatively speaking with some of the others. But I think they're doing a good job. I think the Anaheim Ducks are going to be a good team. It's just a matter of when. I don't think they rally to make the playoffs this year, but I think playoffs should be, if not expected, then maybe anticipated. Is anticipated and expected, is that the same? Not really. But anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the Anaheim Ducks. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.